guys, and welcome back to Wonderfully Homemade. My name is Landis.
And I'm Jenny.
And today we're just going to show you guys a very basic bread recipe, just to kind of acquaint ourselves with using yeast. And once you kind of make your first bread, you can try lots of different types of bread, but this is just your basic, either sandwich bread, dinner rolls, anything like that. You could use this recipe for very few ingredients. And we actually, most recipes, if you look at them, will call for ingredients for 2 loaves of bread, but we just went ahead and half the recipe because we're not looking to make 2 loaves. But if you do want to do that, you can always make a loaf and put it in the freezer for later, or half the recipe like we did.
Yeah, I love to make, I'll make little, I don't know how to describe it, but like golf ball size almost dinner rolls. I'll just pinch them out and freeze a bag.
For sure, I was going to say you could do that and then just put it in the freezer and get them out.
And then that way they just, I put them from the freezer directly onto the baking pan and just bake them for dinner. With dinner.
Super easy.
For dinner. Sometimes for me.
But not for that, right?
Yep. But Landis is the bread queen, so I'm actually really excited to learn from you today.
Hey.
I've made bread a time or 2, but I haven't actually it's normally with calling you and FaceTiming you a bunch of times.
Bread is fun. I think it was about a year ago that I started making bread, and I was a little intimidated by yeast in the beginning until you kind of know how to use it. It can seem kind of daunting, but once you use it and realize really how easy it is. Yeah, and it's so easy to make bread, and I think people think it's harder than it is, so they don't give it a try.
That's why it's fun.
Once you learn, it's great. And if your first loaf doesn't turn out exactly how you want, that's okay. It's just a learning process. So you find little ways to kind of make it easier. So we just heated up our water for activating our yeast, and I think Jen has the perfect way. And I think about it every time now because I used to be super tedious about using a thermometer to test the temperature, which you totally can in the beginning if you're not comfortable. But this is a really funny way of thinking about it.
Well, my thing, like Landis' thing I would say is bread, and kind of sometimes I feel like if I can say my thing is pastries, a lot of people are way better than me, but I do love to like make pastries, so I deal with a lot of yeast. And I don't know, just the way I remember it, because it's very important that your water is not too hot. And so the way I remember how to like make sure you're not adding your yeast when the water is too warm is that if you stick your finger in it and you just kind of imagine like, oh, if this were a hot tub, would I be happy to be in here? And
because it's a living organism.
Exactly, and if it's too hot for you, it's going to be too hot for the yeast. And
just thinking, I mean, it's a living organism. It wants to be warm, but it doesn't want to be hot.
That's right, it wants to be cozy.
Let's go ahead and we're going to pour the water, the hot water, and then the yeast. You want to pass me the yeast? So we have 1 tablespoon of yeast and 1 cup of water. So
and the water that she just poured in there was like steaming hot. I don't know if you could see, but you just probably want to go ahead and put it in your bowl because whatever bowl you're adding it to is probably a lot colder than the cup that it was in before. So you want to go ahead and add it. Don't wait for it to cool down and then add it because it might be too cold.
Yes, and we're going to add the sugar as well. And we have 2 teaspoons of sugar in this. So the sugar goes in with your yeast while you're activating it. And you can stir it a little bit, but don't stir it too much because it can cool down your water.
Yeah, so we're going to let it sit basically for about 10 minutes.
Yeah, so anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes.
And
you'll notice. It'll start bubbling up.
Yeah, it'll just get super bubbly and fluffy and kind of frothy, honestly. But you just want to let it sit.
So this is what it should look like after it's proofed. It's really frothy looking, and you'll see some bubbles throughout, and it just has combined with the water at this point. We have had some time to let it proof, and we're ready to start adding in the actual bread ingredients. So Jen's gonna pass me some flour. Do you want to just have that in there? Yeah. So we're just gonna put everything in the same bowl, and right now we are adding in 2 cups of flour, and we can add a little bit more flour as we're kneading it, if it feels like it's a little sticky. Perfect. So that was 2 cups of flour, and then salt.
Ready?
Yeah. So we are using a teaspoon of salt.
And we're using pink Himalayan salt.
Yes.
You can use whatever you want.
But you can use normal salt. And then 1/4 of a cup of oil.
And it's so nice because with this bread recipe, it must be so simple. You just dump it all at the same time.
You just dump it all in and we'll mix it up. Okay, so we're going to start mixing together all of our ingredients.
Wow, this is a fluffy
I don't know what
baby.
you use, but I like to use a fork when I do it, just because I think sometimes when I use a spoon it sticks to it more, and just to kind of...
I'm not as strong as you, so I use a KitchenAid.
Which is great. And you can use a mixer for all of this too, but for those of you that don't have a mixer or like to do it by hand.
So a lot of even all this resting that the yeast just did makes it very happy and flexible. And so it still behaves the same way once it's a dough. And so if you're working your dough really, really hard and stretching it and pressing it for, 10 minutes or so, it's gonna start, you'll notice it, like it gets more elastic, and it kind of, you can see it like just kind of resizing back on itself. Just let it sit for a while and it'll be more fluffy and pliable that way.
Yeah.
So even a lot of like pastry recipes and bread recipes, you form the loaf and everything, and then you let it sit for like a final proofing, it's called, and that helps it be fluffy, after you bake it.
Yeah. So we've got a nice sticky dough right now, which is great for just mixing, but now that we're gonna need, this would be a step in most recipes where you would flour your surface and knead it on that, which is great, and any expert bread maker is going to tell you to do that, but I'm just gonna tell you guys how I do it, because this is how I do it, and if you wanna flour your surface and do it that way, that's great too, but I find it's really difficult to clean my countertop after I floured it.
Dough everywhere.
So the lazy side of me is like, look, is there a way to just do this in a bowl? So I started just doing it in the bowl, and I got the same bread out of it. So we're just gonna do it like that. So normally when you flour your surface, it adds about a half a cup of flour to it. So I'm just going to sprinkle some flour on and make it not so sticky. I think we are ready.
Looks really
good. Kneaded and good. I'll show you guys. We'll tip it over and show you. But if you can see that, so it's kneaded and ready.
So Lance, something that happens is I will make a dough, and then I'm like so excited about it. Can't wait for like the big reveal. It's gonna be double the size, and it's not. What do I do?
Yeah,
like if it actually doesn't rise.
Yeah, that can be tough, and I think a reason why a lot of people avoid using yeast in general is because it's kind of tricky, because you get to that point and then you're like, it's not rising.
Yeah.
So I struggled with that in the beginning, and it's totally normal to struggle with that. How I kind of learned to combat that is to put it in the microwave, not turning the microwave on because it's metal bowl obviously, but I put a really, really hot boiling bowl of water in the microwave with it, and then I'll put a towel over both bowls, which will show you guys how I do that when I put it in there. But I've learned that if you do that, it doubles in half the time. It just creates, I think about it's like it's sitting just in a sauna or in in a steam room, and it just really gives it that perfect environment for it to do its work. Last step before we let this rise, spend its time rising, we are going to oil another bowl for the dough. Yes, a nice clean oiled bowl, because right now you can see here we've got lots of flour and other things, and we need it in a nice oiled surface. So we're gonna take just a little bit of oil. You can just kind of eye it. I don't know, this is probably like a tablespoon of oil.
And this is just canola oil.
Yeah, this is just normal vegetable oil in our oiled bowl. And now we're gonna go let it rise. We are over by the microwave where I just told you guys about putting it in there. So it's bubbling, like it is hot. You can see it kind of steaming a little bit. So we're just gonna put our loaf in there. So we're gonna put this right in here with the boiling hot water, and then just put a towel over it. We are gonna just let it stay. We're gonna let it rise for about an hour. It should double in size. You'll notice that it will like puff over your bowl, and that's how you know it's ready. And we'll probably check it around 45 minutes, but an hour seems to be the sweet spot for it to double. Just wanna let it rise in your kitchen and not do a little microwave trick. You can do that. It just might take a little bit longer, around maybe 2 hours to rise.
Fluffy.
Okay, so it's very fluffy and showing lots of little bubbles, which is good. It's gonna be a fluffy bread. So we just took it out from its rise time, and now we're gonna put it in our pan. We just greased this up, and we're gonna just move the dough right into it, and then we're gonna let it rise for a little bit longer, and then we'll pop it in the oven, and that's it.
The end.
The end. Okay. We're gonna spread it out, and once it's in the pan like this, you will just let it rise for a little bit longer. I usually check it 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but it'll just puff up a little bit more because we just took out some of the bubbles when we pressed it down into the pan, so it gives it, you talked about this earlier, but it just lets it kind of puff back up. We've preheated our oven to 400, and we're gonna bake this for 40 minutes. This has been resting for about 30 minutes, and it's pretty much doubled in size again, which is exactly what you want to see. So it's filled out the bread pan, and we're just gonna stick it in and let it bake. It's a good loaf.
Guys, I had so much fun. Thank you, Landis, for telling me all about the bread. I think I learned a lot, and I've never made a loaf pan bread before, but I think I might have to go home and try it for myself. That's it for this bread. I really hope you guys try it because it is so easy and it is so much better than any bread you might find at the grocery store. But we're so glad you're following along already, and we'll see you back in the next video.
Bye.
Bye.